Hello, everybody. Good evening. Happy Tuesday to everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to go through my little list of saying hello to everybody I see that is in here, and everybody who's listening. I do appreciate you as well. I thank you all. So let me start from the top. I know Annie is in here somewhere, or she was. She will be joining me shortly, hopefully. We got my lovely Thomas. Nice to see you. And Kat K, thank you both for being here and keeping my chat going and rolling. And hi to Debbie Guzzardo. Good to see you, Debbie. I know I have to say Guzzardo because we have two Debbies usually. And we have Best of Me. Good to see you. We have Melissa Massacre. Good to see you. And Ro, hi. Hope you're doing well. We have, let me go down, down, down. Carla, good to see you too. Oh, hi, Crime Spy 2024. We have Tinel Rie. Sorry, I probably slaughtered that. Hey, Doc Terry, good to see you. And we have Carla, good to see you too. And we have, hold on, I'm going down. Sharon Asp, good to see you, Sharon. Hope you all doing good today. We have, let me see, Sunny Struck, good to see you, Sunny. And Allison, good to see you too. We have OCD Shaggy. Well, OCD, if I didn't have a job, I might do 8 hours a day. I don't think you'll listen to me for that long. You would be bored. Hey, Lucy's mom, good to see you. Sunny Murphy. And oh, I think I about have. Oh, there's Miss Potts. Come on up, Missy. And we have Firefly, SW Firefly. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that one too. And typically unique. Hi, Leslie, and then Sadie Vasek, Sudi Vasek. Sorry, and then we have P Fox, Bella B, Misty Blue. New names. I love it. Thank you for being here and presenting yourself in chat. I always appreciate that. So let's see. Where are you, Miss Annie? Bella B. That's a nice name. I like that, Bella B. So today I was going to talk a little bit about media, mainstream media, and how they're handling the Coburger case. However, I think you all heard me talk about this before. The way Brian was arrested up in Pennsylvania, and I said it a few times that I think it has something to do with fugitive status, even though we know he wasn't a fugitive. According to the PCA, he's not a fugitive. However, his warrants sure look like it. And I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I've even talked to a few lawyers, and other than Yoli, who put out a wonderful video that I want to share with you guys, um, she put out a wonderful video about this. She actually went through the documents. And so that's one of the things. Hey, Annie, how are you?
Hello.
Oh, hold on. Say that again. Hello.
Hello.
Oh no, your sound is like halfway cutting off.
Hmm. Can't hear
No,
me, huh?
I can hear you, but it's like cutting out. It's in and
I'll
out, in and
come back.
out.
I'll come back.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share that video here in a minute. Let's just make sure that we can all hear Annie. I know a lot of you appreciate Annie's view as well. I sure do. And I like having her on here whenever she's willing to. So I'm happy I can get her on. But yeah, so basically, if you read those documents and the way that they arrested Brian is very sus. Um, and it's not just sus in a way that it's sus that they let him, travel across the country, first of all. It's also sus that they chose to arrest him in a different state. And it's sus the way they did it, the way they arrested him, no cameras, nothing. And my first thought was when I heard all that was, well, they surely must have arrested him as a fugitive. That's the only thing that made sense to me, even though I don't know the law. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I talked to a lot of people about this, and not everybody agreed with me, of course, but maybe now we get a better picture of it. And I want to thank Yoli. I'm going to put out, let me see if I can put this out there so everybody can also go and subscribe to her channel. She's fantastic. She is a civil lawyer, so she's not a criminal defense lawyer. That's the video we're going to go ahead and watch here in a minute. However, she does, of course, know about law, and she has a lot of her cases have involved criminal cases as well. So she's versed in its, more than normal any civil lawyer would be. So I always appreciate her input on this. And last we spoke about this. So I hope I inspired her a little bit to, and I think I did, to look into this. And I know she was enthralled by the whole Pennsylvania state arrest as well. So let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and share that before, I guess Annie will pop up here. She might have to reboot or something. So I'm going to present that video. Let's go ahead and restart this.
Hello there, I'm Yoli Medina, civil attorney, and today I wanted to do a video on Brian's arrest in Pennsylvania, his hometown, where he was arrested.
Before I go on, I just want to make sure, can you all hear that good? I know it's very low in volume, but that's as high as I can crank it up on YouTube. But I want to make sure that you all hear it. Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you.
At his family home. One of the things that's always bothered me is how he was arrested, with the cops swarming down on him in the early morning hours, breaking glass. And I've always had an issue with that. And so I decided to look at the documents, and there is a criminal case open in Pennsylvania for Brian Coburger, and it's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Coburger. And I'm going to look into show you some documents that a document that I found that is called a police criminal complaint. And let me.
This is actually available if anybody wants to find it. I know it's still up there on the Pennsylvania site. Let me see if I can link that to you. Hi, Annie, by the way.
Hi there. Can you hear me better?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Much, much better.
Yeah, I had to go in and adjust my settings in StreamYard. My mic was turned all the way down. I don't know why.
Okay. That's good. Did you have you seen this video yet, by the way?
I have not, so I'm excited to watch it.
Oh, let me see here. Let me roll it, and we'll discuss. I'll find the document so that everybody can go on, and I'll roll it again.
Me post it here, share the screen with you. Okay. So here is the document that I'm referring to. And if you see the highlights, well, at the top it says police criminal complaint. And then at the top it has a date of 12/30/2022. And then it says the offense, which he is charged with, is highlighted as section 9134, subtitle or title 42. Okay. So I want to read, we'll go into that statute in a minute, but I want to read what is on this police criminal complaint. It says, in that, on or about said date, the defendant, having been charged with the commission of any crime from another state, or having been convicted of a crime in another state, and having escaped from confinement or having broken the terms of his or her bail, probation, or parole, and having been declared a fugitive of justice from said state. The defendant has been located within or is believed to be within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Okay, I don't know about you, but that sounds to me like he was arrested as a fugitive, which means, and we'll look at the statute. Hang on a second, let me pull up the statute that I found.
I'm linking that for you guys.
Then here is the statute. And I'm going to have to read it on here. Okay, so the statute says, it's 42, section 914, and it's arrest prior to requisition. It says, whenever any person within this Commonwealth shall be charged on the oath of any credible person before any judge or issuing authority of this Commonwealth with the commission of any crime in any other state, and except in cases arising under 9127, and those cases are listed in parentheses, it says, relating to extradition of persons not present in demanding state at the time of commission of the crime. Well, at the time of the commission of the crime, allegedly, if Brian committed the crime, he was in the state, so 9127 does not apply. So let's read that again without having to read the parentheses. Whenever any person within this Commonwealth shall be charged on the oath of any credible person before any judge or issuing authority of this Commonwealth with the commission of any crime in any other state, with having fled from justice or having been convicted of a crime in that state, and having escaped from confinement or having broken the terms of his bail, probation, or parole, or whenever complaint shall have been made before any judge or issuing authority in this Commonwealth, setting forth on the affidavit of any credible person in another state that a crime has been committed in such other state, and that the accused has been charged in such state with the commission of the crime, and again, except in cases arising under 9127, which doesn't apply here, has fled from justice or with having been convicted of a crime in that state and having escaped from confinement or having broken the terms of bail, probation, or parole, and is believed to be in this Commonwealth, the judge or issuing authority shall issue a warrant directed to any peace officer commanding him to apprehend the person named therein wherever he may be found in the Commonwealth, and bring him before the same or any judge, any other judge, or issuing authority who or which may be available in or convenient of access to the place where the arrest may be made to answer the charge or complaint and affidavit, and a certified copy of the sworn charge or complaint and affidavit upon which the warrant is issued shall be attached to the warrant. Okay, so I'm reading this and I'm thinking that they arrested him as a fugitive. And I thought he went home for Christmas, for the Christmas holiday. So I'm not sure why it says that he was a fugitive. And that's how I'm reading this. But in any event, the documents are in the docket. And I'll post it in the description box, the docket for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Coburger. And you can look at the documents there. They have the search warrants and things like that. And I saw this police criminal complaint and I looked at it. And so they have him as a person who fled justice, which I'm not so sure that is accurate, because the arrest warrant wasn't signed until December 29th or December 30th, one of those days. But it wasn't signed till the end of December. So he left mid-December. So he left because he was going to his home for the holidays, and he traveled back with his father. So I'm not sure why this is, and I'm not sure because I don't practice criminal law, so I may be completely wrong, but I'm putting this out there because I'm wondering if there's a way to do a motion to suppress this arrest warrant because of the fact that he wasn't a fugitive. He wasn't fleeing any charge. He wasn't charged when he left. So I'm just wondering if there would be a motion to suppress this entire arrest warrant in Pennsylvania. Now, I'm sure if there was a way, it probably would have been done already. But, you know, it still doesn't obviate the arrest warrant in Idaho, in Moscow, Idaho. But the way he was arrested, I'm wondering if there's a way that there's a way to suppress any evidence that they obtained when they arrested him based on the fact that they did not have probable cause to arrest him as a fugitive. At least that's how I'm seeing it. So let me know what you think in the comments. And I may be totally off base, but those are my thoughts. And if any criminal attorney experienced in this takes a look at my video, comment below and let me know what you think. If I'm totally off base or if I might be onto something. Okay, thank you.
Exactly my thoughts. What do you think, Annie? This is exactly what I thought when I heard about his arrest.
Well, I agree with her the last part as far as trying to get the arrest warrant tossed. But I think it also, she was talking about probable cause there at the end, right? Mm-hmm. I believe that might be one of the things that the defense keeps referring to when they talk about Frank's motions, because that's one of the criteria for Frank's, is that a false statement was made by an officer to make it, though, as probable cause, like, appears to the court. Do you get what I'm saying? Yes. So, like, if an officer knows that they don't have probable cause, but they put a false statement in their affidavit to make it sound like they have probable cause, that would be a reason for a Frank's motion or to request a Frank's hearing. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, if you think about it, if this is true, and this is documented, it's not like we're making this up. This is I put out the link for everybody for Yoli's video for her. Go and like this video, please. And also subscribe to Yoli. She's fantastic. But if this is true, and they arrested him as under the fugitive status, how is that even possible? He wasn't arrested or alerted or any of those things up in Idaho or in what is it called? Washington, right?
That we know of.
That we know of. But like, it doesn't say in the PCA.
Right.
Right. So what is up here? Like, I just really want to know is that how they got away with this, because then this is a lie too. If they arrested him on false basis, not only what you're talking about, but also this included. This is like, another thing to add.
Well, yeah, I think that's what like Elisa Masseth is talking about when she talks about like motions to suppress warrants are coming. She's talking about arrest warrants, search warrants, you name it, any, warrants for cell phones, anything that they got on him, if they obtained it through, fruit of the poisonous tree from a warrant they should have never obtained in the first place, anything that came after is going to be suppressed. So, I believe truly that's what she's talking about. When she says motion to suppress warrants are coming, she's talking about all the warrants.
Well, and this included. Yeah. I mean,
the arrest warrant, the search warrant. Right.
Exactly. This is a police criminal complaint. So they filed the complaint first, right? Then they did the PCA or the search, the PCA to arrest Brian in Pennsylvania. But I think this came out first, this criminal complaint. And on basis of the criminal complaint is how they arrested or got the warrant from a judge, is my thought on it.
It sounds like they tried to make the Pennsylvania judge believe that this person was a fugitive.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how is that even in legal
Well, I mean,
terms?
if that's what they did, it would definitely be grounds to file for a Franks hearing and ask for the arrest warrant to be suppressed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very curious if this has anything to do with anything that they're working on, or they just like, they're like, well, that's the least of our worries. However, I don't think so, because this is part of the problem is,
Right.
how they went about arresting Brian. Not only like, how did you get to Brian, but also how on earth did you arrest him? He wasn't a fugitive.
Right.
How did you arrest him as a fugitive, if that's the case? But from reading what we saw, and we can go in and read those documents ourselves, which I've done numerous times. It says, that they arrested him on those bases. So what the heck? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And they and people think, why are we questioning these things? Well, all this matters in legal terms. All these things matter.
Yeah. Well, here's like one of the grounds for Franks, right? The affiant knowingly, intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth includes a false statement in the affidavit. So whether it's an affidavit for a search warrant, an arrest warrant, this is like one of the grounds for a Franks motion, for like a defense attorney to request a Franks hearing, right? So if the affiant knowingly, that's the officer, that's the, person requesting the warrant. If they knowingly, intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth includes a false statement in the affidavit. So, for instance, including a false statement such as, this person is a fugitive in our state. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be your affiant intentionally and knowingly and with reckless disregard for the truth, including a false statement.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty big, because we all know that that's not, from what we know that he didn't run from the law. He went home for a vacation like all the rest of the kids. So if he's not knowing about this, how can they slap him with a fugitive complaint? So yeah. And anyway, I know you sent me a few things there, and those are all very good and interesting. Do you want to go into it? And also, just to add, I know that there was a couple of documents that dropped today. I'm probably not going to go over those unless we want to do that later on. It's going to be time consuming, because I know that the defense's one is like 20, what is it? Oh, I think it's 22 pages or something like that. 23 pages. And then the other one from the state is all under seal, of course. So that one is like just a bunch of like this and that's, this is what's in here, but it's all under seal, so we won't be able to see any of those.
Yeah.
But if you want to bring that up, the Franks notion, and we can talk about that if you want to. Because
no, I'm on my phone. I'm not on my
okay.
computer, so I can't bring anything up. But
yeah, no, but we can talk about it. How about that? Because it's a lot of reading, and it's probably because it's all going to come into play. I think we've seen.
Well, see, I think the thing that I had sent you, which I found to be, it was probably one of the things that I thought was more important, just because it was one of the things that Masseth talked about in court. And initially when she said it, I never looked up what a spoliation instruction actually means in Idaho. Okay. And then I decided to just go look it up.
Yeah.
I'm like, forget it. I assumed it meant something like, you're going to get instruction from the judge for something to be thrown out or whatever. No, that's not what it means at all. So according to everything I could find, spoliation instructions in Idaho, section 18-2603, has to do with the destruction or significant alteration of evidence or the failure to properly preserve property for another use as evidence in pending or the reasonably foreseeable future litigation. And then,
which would include a lot of things.
Well, I thought it was interesting that it said pending.
Yeah.
So, and then another thing I found out was spoliation is usually used in civil litigation, like when one party believes that the other party, like in a divorce or something, has, destroyed the engine in the car, took the, destroyed something that was supposed to be split in the divorce or whatever. So it's usually for civil. But what I found out is that in Idaho, it's used in civil, but it's also used in criminal. And if a spoliation instruction or a spoliation occurs in a case where a felony offense is being charged, the penalties include up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine for each offense. Which I thought was pretty interesting, considering Brian's case is a felony case. Spoliation is when evidence has been significantly altered, destroyed, or improperly preserved.
Well, isn't it very close to Frank's? What's
Yeah, Frank's is a little different though. Frank's is when you're challenging statements in the affidavit that were used to secure arrest warrants and search warrants.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I get it.
Spoliation instruction has to do with the willful destruction of evidence by usually like law enforcement. If it's in a criminal case, it is usually like the defense accusing, the state of destroying evidence, or an officer destroyed evidence, or like a lawyer on the way to the court. That was one of the examples I saw, like a lawyer on their way to the courtroom, like disposes of something, something like that. Yeah. So
we have a lot.
I thought it was pretty interesting that she mentioned Frank's and spoliation instructions. And then when I kind of looked up what both were, I'm going, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Not only are they in the Frank side of it talking about warrants, statements made by officers. That's what Frank's is for. It's specifically to challenge the statements made by officers to obtain search and arrest warrants. And then spoliation has to do with literally, your officers destroying evidence knowingly, intentionally.
Well, we don't know about that. We know that they had I didn't save this work. And would that go under? I'm wondering if that would go under spoliation. I
think what they're talking about when she talks about spoliation has to do with the house. And I think the reason that it has to do with the house is because, it says the failure to properly preserve property for another's use as evidence.
Well, so yes, and that's what I sort of heard too when you read it. However, then I was thinking, well, she signed off on it. Or did she just, well, she didn't sign off on it. She said, we don't need anything more in there. She didn't.
Well, because I think that at that point, so if you're the defense, your crime scene's been highly contaminated. The police went in, cleared out items. They removed things, right?
Panels.
So that would be the failure to properly preserve property. And it's a significant alteration of the evidence.
Well, yeah, I mean, they busted out panels. It was gutted. So inside, by the time I think they got there, and I don't know if this is the first time she got there, but I'm fairly certain that it was. By the time she got there, the inside was gutted out. We didn't see that. We didn't see
Mm.
that because obviously, they didn't show us the inside of the house. But can you imagine it was already gutted back in when was this when they went in for the first time? January, February, January, end of
Mm.
January 2023, right?
It was October 31st that the FBI went back, did Faro, and then within the following week is when the defense went back because the
No,
state went
no,
back first.
I'm talking the first time.
Oh, the first time. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. So this is like way back when,
Mm.
after Brian was arrested. They had already by then, because she didn't get access until
Well,
Brian
I'm
was
talking about like
arrested.
Chief. I'm talking about like Chief Fry, literally driving the U-Haul.
That's before too. But
Well,
I'm
that's what I'm
talking
saying.
about them gutting everything. They
Yeah.
gutted the inside of that house, which is
Yeah.
another no-no because
Yeah.
you just went in and spoiled everything in that crimes. Not only did you take out everything that you thought, oh, they
Well,
might
even
want
before
this.
even
Yeah.
before they gutted it, though, they had already removed belongings, removed
Hmm.
items. They completely, altered the crime scene. They
Hmm.
altered the evidence.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. Yes. So, but what I'm saying on top of all that is they even gutted the inside.
Mm.
and and that's, I guess, and they had a last chance to go in, and that's what I'm saying, quote unquote, and signed off on it because yes, by then everything was gone and done and dusted, right? However, I don't think the way she worded it isn't really signing off, so I might be expressing it incorrectly.
Mm.
But she's like, yeah, we don't need it. And I think
Right.
a lot of us thought, well, it's because she knows it's not Brian. Let them prove it after.
Hmm.
But I think it has more to do with, I always thought it had more to do with that they already messed things up inside there. Like nothing looked like it was. They had already gone in, tampered with all that, like you say. And that's why
Mm.
she's like, I have no use for it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be what you're saying, the actual house. But then
I
of
mean, I
course
think it could
you
be a lot of things,
like
not
it
just
could
the
be,
house. Yeah.
and I am wondering if one of them, or that falls under Frank's, that probably falls under the Frank's hearing, would be the that complaint up in the fugitive status,
Mm.
right? That would fall under Frank's. But so I just want to separate the two. Um,
Right. Yeah. Frank's would be like the false statements made by the officer in the affidavit for a warrant. Yeah.
but and that sort of crosses over too because now we heard, well, I don't know if he lied or not, Payne. The way he expressed himself, all that, like, the FBI helped me write it. The FBI did this. The FBI, did he just separate himself from not getting a Frank's hearing slapped on top of him?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, is that
Hmm.
how he did it purposefully? I don't know, but it sure sounded to me. To me, it sounded like that. He was very calculated in every answer he gave, and I'm sure
Yeah.
he was trained to do that. I'm sure the prosecution told him to, not say anything, basically, to
Hmm.
avoid saying anything. But
Well, some of the key takeaways that I found from the Franks versus Delaware case was false statements provided by an officer to obtain warrants. A Frank's hearing is going to be to challenge the validity of officer statements made to obtain warrants. If the defendant, and here's the thing, so a Frank's hearing actually won't even be granted until there is a preliminary motion filed prior and you prove that the Franks hearing is necessary. So you actually have to provide some kind of evidence first
mhm,
before the hearing is going to even be approved.
yeah,
But it does say that if the defendant can prove false statements were made to secure the warrant, it could lead to the exclusion of evidence obtained via the warrant.
which
So
means almost everything, really.
depending
Because
which warrant you're trying to get, that you're questioning the validity of,
yeah,
whether it's a search warrant, an arrest warrant, right? I guess it could lead to the exclusion of it. Yeah.
well, yeah, because let's say they are attacking most of the things that are in the PCA, right? You have the cell data, you have the sheet, you have now the sheet is iffy. I don't know if they can, but the cell data definitely. How they did that, how they didn't save their work, all that obviously. So that would fall under it. The statements from the roommates could fall under it depending on what evidence they have. Um, what else? Let me see. What else do they have?
I don't know. People are complaining about the sound. I have my volume all the way down. I mean,
Oh,
I guess they could turn their volume down if it's too loud for them. I don't know what else to say.
is it Annie that's too loud or me?
They're saying you're really low and I'm really loud. I have my
Oh,
phone like at least 3 feet away from me, and
hold on.
I have my volume all the way down.
I
So
can, I probably edited your volume before because that's when we had some issues. Talk now. I turned it down just a little bit on my end.
hello.
Oh, yeah, I cranked you down too. Wait, wait. Yeah. No, I cranked you up earlier because of your, your audio
I
issues.
was gonna say I literally have my volume all the way down.
So it's me. It's my fault. It's my fault. Sorry, sorry, everybody. Um, I hope this sounds better now. Okay. Yeah, I guess it depends on where you listen to it. I'm listening with headphones on, so
Mm,
maybe that's why I don't know if it's better here. Everybody says better. Okay, good. All right. Where
I was
were
gonna
we?
say I turned my volume all the way down, and I even moved my phone like it's sitting a couple
No,
feet
no.
away from me. So
I think you're good. It was all my fault. All my fault. I cranked you up. I want to hear what Annie has to say. Sorry. All right. So where were we? Yes. Uh, who were we talking
so
about?
we were talking about Franks and
Yeah.
how,
But yes, but we were talking about
but I think you
somebody.
were also trying to talk about like what would be the evidence that the state would have, and you were talking about the cell phone records, the
Yes.
sheets. Right.
Yes, exactly. So what else would it be? Because I don't know about the sheet. How they can how can they throw that in there?
Well, I think the DNA itself is likely going to be challenged, suppressed.
Yeah, but
It's
that
just my
wouldn't fall
opinion. I
under
think because of the
Frank's.
way they did it.
Well,
So, I mean, if I'm right about my hunch, and they actually didn't do any of his DNA until after arrest, they absolutely had nothing
well, yeah,
till
then
after they
that would
arrested
be
him.
thrown out anyway because it would become fruit of the
Yeah.
poisonous tree. I'm just thinking
Or
about
if they obtained, if they uploaded the profile, say, as though
Mhm,
they're the user, and they backdoored it and used a loophole, that could be grounds to get it
mhm,
suppressed.
mhm. I'm just thinking about what would be under the Franks hearing because I know a lot of things like if that all goes through, then everything under that, meaning like you said, the sheet,
Mm.
the DNA, all that would not, wouldn't be
Well,
able to bring that in.
the first grounds that I found for Frank's I thought was pretty interesting just because it was a longer statement. The affiant knowingly intended to be Brett Payne. So let's put this in the
That again, you
aspect
cut
of
out.
the
You cut out.
affidavit, right? So the
Read that.
affidavit for arrest.
Hold on. Read that again because you cut out. Read that again.
Sorry. So, we'll say this is the affidavit by Brett Payne. Grounds for Frank's would be your affiant knowingly, intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth includes a false statement in the affidavit for the warrant, whether it's a search warrant, arrest warrant, whatever.
Hmm.
It's very specific that the affiant knowingly, intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth. included a false statement.
So my question there would be, if he blames it on the FBI, because obviously almost everything he said, you wrote this, how did you come to that conclusion? Or everything was FBI, 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 at least for Payne.
Well, let's see what number 2 is. So that was number 1. Number 2, the false statement was made to secure probable cause. Let's consider both, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about the affidavit for arrest.
hmm
Your affiant has knowingly, intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth included a false statement in his affidavit for the arrest warrant.
hmm
And that false statement was made to show the court probable cause. So it's like both go, one goes hand in hand with the other. 9
Sure.
times out of 10, if your affiant is making these including false statements, with reckless disregard for the truth, they're doing it because they likely have no probable cause to secure the warrant they're going for.
hmm
So they make something up to make it look like they have probable cause to secure their warrant.
Yeah, I'm just
So let's
thinking.
think about all of the things that Corporal Brett Payne could
Yeah,
have intentionally lied about
but that's
in
what I'm
this
thinking
probable
about.
cause.
That's
Yeah,
exactly where my mind goes. But the
yeah.
only problem is, even though my mind goes there, when he was sitting in the hearing and he was on the stand, um, which is under penalty, the way he
Well, see,
answered
it's
all
not
the
even just the
questions.
false statement. It's the false statements that he made in his affidavit to show probable cause.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what if he says, I got this from the FBI? Then
Even
what?
if he says that, he would have to show that.
I guess
He would
so.
still,
Yeah. Yeah,
he
I
would
guess
still
so.
have to show that.
Yeah, I guess so. Because he put his name on it,
Yeah.
basically. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm with you. I'm
I
with you.
mean, I'm
I
no
have to think
lawyer,
about this.
I'm
I'm
no
not a
lawyer,
lawyer
but
either, but yeah, he did put his name on it. So he's still the party, right?
yeah. Well, I'm just saying, as
Responsible
I
for
was
it.
looking up a lot of this information on Frank's hearings, I had it in mind, like thinking in mind as I'm reading it. Your affiant, that's the person applying for the warrant. They're the
hmm
ones typing up the affidavit and submitting it to the court.
hmm
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, she's talking about Frank's, she's talking about spoliation instruction. Let's see what both of these things mean and why she would be mentioning them. And it would appear she's mentioning them because not only for a Frank's issue would it have to do with your affiant, that would be Brett Payne, Blaker, the people who applied for warrants. That's Brett Payne and Blaker. Also Mowry, right? Couple of people from ISP, I think, were applying. It's whoever was applying for warrants. Those would be your affiants,
Yeah. And
you
let me
know.
throw in something else here that we didn't know about until that hearing with Payne, was there was a second PCA and we haven't
Mm.
seen it, correct?
Um, No, I think there was a couple of different people who went over it when it very first came out, but then they sealed it. So anybody who was like smart enough to go over it or print it out immediately when it came out, they got it. But if I remember correctly, a couple of people
But you're
got
not
that when it
talking
first
about
came out.
the one, because, from what we knew, there was
There's
one in
two
Idaho.
Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly, there were two separate affidavits, correct, for Pennsylvania, and then one that Blaker submitted for the search warrant in Washington.
Yeah, exactly. But now the way it seemed to me, she's talking about two in Idaho, a second one.
Two in Idaho.
Well, I mean, because she's talking about a second one, right? She's not talking about because in that would make it three or four, because they had Washington, they had Pennsylvania, and then they had Idaho. Then she would
What
say
did,
three, right? But because she was
what was,
talking to Payne, she was talking about his probable cause affidavit and saying that there were two, which means she addressed him for what he written. And as far as I know, I've never seen a second PCA from Payne. Have you? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, no, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If I remember correctly, in the very beginning, when those probable cause affidavits first came out, there were technically three. And if I remember correctly, there were two separate ones from Payne, one from Blaker.
Uh,
The one from Blaker was used to secure the search warrant in Washington. That is the affidavit that Don Daniels attached when applying for the search warrant in Washington for Brian's apartment.
mhm.
And if I remember correctly, there were two for Pennsylvania. One ended up getting immediately sealed. And then the one that we have is the one that's a redacted version. I could be wrong, but I could have sworn there were two for PA.
Okay. I have to go back. Well, there's only one now, so regardless, yes, it's probably gone. But I haven't seen. Why have I not, or have I seen the second one? And if anybody has it, please send it to me because I do not remember seeing a second PCA from Payne. Never ever. Do you think Alana has that?
Probably. I was just about to say I'll message her later and ask her if she's
Yeah.
actually, I mean, I may even have it in my email from back in the day. I'll check my emails. Because usually what I did is I would like download the document and save it. You know, back then when they were coming fast and hard,
Yep.
we were like downloading left and right, you know?
Well, there's a lot of things that went off, that site. So
Mm.
whoever, I never printed anything out, to be honest with you.
I
I
didn't
did,
do a lot of printing. I did a lot of downloading.
yeah. I know that that's crazy that they remove stuff. Why would they even remove stuff like that?
Well, we know a lot of stuff was removed because even NASA said there was over 100 warrants in this case. And if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, there's only maybe like 30 or so listed, maybe 50. So
Well,
tops.
they were all there at one point, I think. Not the federal ones, of course.
No,
And
I know. I'm not
yeah,
talking about the
no.
subpoenas.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
said warrants. She said
yeah.
100 warrants, over 100.
And I think those might have been out there in the beginning. There was like a long list of warrants, and I remember people going over
Yeah,
them in streams. So we can probably find that, but I've never ever heard anybody go over two separate PCAs from Payne, which that's the one I'm looking for. If I
I will do my very best. I could be wrong. I mean,
Mhm,
honestly. It really is. Who knows at this point? I feel like I've seen multiple versions of a probable cause affidavit. Blaker's is entirely different
mhm,
from Payne's. There's a lot of contradictions. Um, for instance, Payne has Brian traveling this route after the crime all over the place, but yet Blaker is telling the judge in Washington that they believe he went immediately home
right.
after the crime to clean up. So
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. He either immediately went home after the crime or he drove around for an hour, but it can't be both.
yeah, yeah. That see, okay. I promise you guys, once I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna go over all the. I'm sure somebody has already, but go over all the differences in all these PCAs that we can get our hands on would probably be good to do, right? To
I
go over,
think that's a great idea. And I
yeah,
think
go
it's funny too, because that's not the only contradiction,
over
right? So in Payne's probable cause affidavit, talks about the sheath being found on the bed to the right of Mogan,
to
right?
the side on the side of the victim of Mary
To the
Mogan. Yes,
right of Mogan
yes,
is what
correct.
he wrote. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's interesting considering Blaker is telling a judge in Washington on December 28th, I think it was, 2022, he needed to get into Brian's apartment because they believe that's where the knife and the sheath would be.
Mm-hmm.
They believe the weapon and the sheath to the weapon would be in his apartment because he immediately went home following the crime.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally Blaker's reasoning to get the search warrant.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to see that. Let's point out all the differences. Let's do a
Oh, it's
homework.
wild when you actually go and compare the two side by side. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild.
I'm sure you have. I have not because as I said, I've only read them separately, but I've, never really had my own show or my own channel. So,
Mm.
but now that I do, maybe would you guys be interested out there if we did something like that? I hope so, because that's important. Like you say, they put out an arrest warrant in Washington that they think that the sheath is in Brian's home.
Yeah,
And who was
that's
it that
1,000,000% fact.
who is it that pointed out the sheath and the sheath location to Payne again?
He doesn't say.
I thought he
He
said
just
Blaker.
No, he just says it was later noticed. Blaker's the one who said he was told about it by ISP Gary Tolson,
Oh,
if I remember
okay.
correctly, or Detective Tolbert. Tolbert, that's who it was.
Okay. So he didn't say Blaker Detective Blaker pointed
Yeah,
that out.
Payne claims it was later noticed, that he
Okay.
later noticed a tan leather knife sheath. Blaker saying he was later told about it by ISP Detective Tolbert.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's all coming back to me now, there were not two different probable cause affidavits for Pennsylvania.
Only
What
one.
it was the original probable cause affidavit was unsealed, and that was the portion that had everything regarding Ethan and where he was found in the room with Xana. That was all
Oh yeah,
redacted.
yeah. And the driver's
And
name, the private driver's name.
yes.
I think that's to this day it's
So
still
I
on
don't
there.
think there's two versions. I think what it was is the first version that went out to PA was supposed to be redacted, and PA released it unredacted and then went back and redacted it.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter, because at that point I think a lot of people had already gotten it. So if you go back to the beginning, when that original probable cause affidavit was dropped, there are a lot of people who got it in its original state before it was redacted, and they read through that shit live. So
Oh God, finding all that. I'd rather just read through the document.
I know,
I
same.
need to somehow scramble those documents together. Does anybody out there have that? I beg you, please email it to me. My email should be in the description to this video, or the show in the description field. But I will put it out here as well, just in case, because I want that.
Yeah, I know there's quite a few people who covered that original probable cause in its entirety when it first came out.
Yeah, I want to see that. Definitely. Because I'm not going to go out over like live streams with people. That's like, oh my God.
No, yeah,
And
that's what
it's
I
just
mean.
finding
Back
all
in the
that.
day, yeah, back then too, some of those live streams were like 4 or 5 hours, because we were just getting documents that were going through page by page.
Mhm. Because there's a lot, but
I
I
think it
just
was Grizzly, actually. I don't usually promote any channels. I really don't. I'm sure Lana covered it. Lana, I
Mhm.
100% know
Oh
covered
yeah.
it in its entirety. But Grizzly, if I remember correctly, also covered the entire probable cause affidavit when it was first dropped.
Oh yeah. She's got a fantastic channel, by the way. Go ahead and mention anybody you like here. It's okay.
Oh,
It's
well,
fine.
Carly's asking if I have a channel. I have a channel, but my channel has nothing to do with true crime. It's your zen for when you need a break from true crime. You get to go watch my shopping videos.
I'm gonna I'm gonna have to put that out there. Is it
Yeah,
your shop?
my channel has nothing to do with true crime. It's it's just my channel for fun. It's all my shopping stuff.
Okay. Well, put it in private chat and I'll put it out there.
Oh no, I don't even need whatever. You can, if you click on my profile, you can go to my channel, and there it is. It's just
Oh,
shopping stuff. Yeah,
okay.
nothing major.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. It seems like there is an interest in comparing the arrest warrants, which
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
sure a lot
We'll
of
see.
Frank's hearings coming up, a lot
Mm,
of that will involve just that.
yeah,
Just that.
comparing the search warrant in Washington to the arrest warrant in PA. Yeah, I remember doing it back in the day, and even then, people I was like, this doesn't make any sense. How if they had the sheath on November 13th, are they telling a judge in Washington on December 28th that they believe that's where the weapon and the sheath to the weapon would be, is in his apartment?
That is wild to me. That is wild to me.
It doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
And then you have Blaker stating that he immediately went home after the crime, but Payne has this map where he's driving around for like an hour or so.
And he didn't, I mean, he pulled it out of his rear end, but he pulled it out of, like, quote unquote, his pings, right, to the tower.
Right.
Yeah. So how does that fall in place?
Oh, that's what I mean. And that's why I wanted to look up the spoliation instruction specifically. You know, I kind of had an idea of what Frank's was, but the spoliation instructions, it wasn't until I actually looked it up for Idaho, like their actual code for it, you know, and it is what it is. They also recently, I think it was in 2019, they recently adopted new spoliation instructions for like tort claims too. So it has to, and I thought that was interesting because if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the case, isn't that why the Gonzalez family retained Gray, was something to do with a tort claim, tort filing?
It does sound, yes, it does sound familiar.
Yeah.
It does sound familiar. Can you remind us all what a tort claim is?
If I remember correctly, the tort claim had to do with like, not third party. Tort. I believe they can sue like the police department and the college and stuff like that, right? For like ineptitude or something.
Yeah, they can sue the city. They can sue. Yes, correct. So they reserve the right, basically. That must be the definition of the tort. Then that quote unquote they reserve.
Well, I guess originally spoliation wasn't tied with like this third party tort stuff, and now it is. I think it was adopted in 2019. It said when I was looking it up.
Well, but you also said that that's the time limit on that runs out. What, in November?
I think it's 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they have 3 years for tort claims.
And I wonder if there's a way to, do they have to file it again, or is it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it. I just thought it was interesting when I was looking up spoliation instructions that there was specific code, you know, whatever that was adopted for it to be attached to tort as well. So I from what I understood, from what I read, your spoliation instruction for tort has to do with like the other party. That, so like say you file a tort claim against someone, right? You're trying to sue them and they go and destroy evidence. Do you get what I'm saying? In that, for that case, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it goes hand in hand with the other stuff we just talked about. They just had the forethought to do that, to file it, to reserve the right. Even though all we hear from the Gonzalez family is how much, you know, they think that Brian is guilty, they still reserve the right, which is probably very telling, you know, that they do reserve the right to sue the city.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting too that it talks about how spoliation is commonly used in civil litigation, right? But that when spoliation occurs in a felony case, the penalties are huge. You're looking at 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
Well, and also, can you keep being a cop after that?
No, because at that point you've committed a felony.
Exactly. And then you lose your gun license. I mean, it's a felony, right? Felons cannot keep guns. They can't. There's a lot of things that come with that, being a felon.
Like if a lawyer destroys evidence for their client, right, that they know is going to get their client in trouble, that would be a spoliation instruction. You could, right? So like if the other side found out that the attorney for whoever destroyed something in the case intentionally so that their client wouldn't look guilty, or whatever, wouldn't be able to be brought against their client. And that would result, especially if it's a criminal, if it's a felony case, that would result in that lawyer not only being disbarred, but they could be charged with the felony. They'd be looking at 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. That's just an example of, what spoliation, when spoliation occurs in a felony case, like a lawyer destroying something or a cop destroying something.
Do you remember the Murdoch case? Was there any mention of that?
No.
No? Okay. I wonder if they even brought that into, but that was basically, that's not what the whole trial was about. The trial was about murder. And what he had done, of course, as a lawyer, I think they brought up now or bringing up in the second lawsuit, right? Something like that, maybe. And then they disbarred him, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna plead for people to hopefully send us the unedited, not unedited, but the unredacted documents, so we can go and go over them. Oh,
I will try to find it. If I find it, I will send it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Please do. And again, I put out my email address for everybody, so that if anybody does have it, please, please, please send it my way. All right. Should we go into the media? Because I found a very interesting video, or like the latest thing that, I mean, the latest, it's been a few days. Hold on, let me see when they put this out. Oh, stop. Don't play. Let me see. From News Nation. No, this is actually Law and Crime. I guess News Nation and Law and Crime has been cooperating or working together lately. So I don't know if they bought them or one bought the other, but I wanted to bring this up because 5 key issues in Brian Coburger's case. And this is now 8 days ago, and I don't know if everybody's seen it, but there's a lot of points in here. I can see 2 ways on this, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But let's go ahead and play it, and I want your take on it. Let me go and share it before I start playing it, of course. Let's see here. Go share that. Make sure the sound is on, obviously. And here we go.
Our defense team firmly, and I mean firmly, believes in Mr. Coburger's innocence.
Brian Coburger, accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students. The case seems to be moving painstakingly slow. But what's happening behind the scenes, and what are the biggest questions that remain? We'll discuss in this episode of Enton Across America. Hey everybody, this is Brian. Thanks for listening to this podcast. I'm actually in the car right now in between stories. I've been in the car and in airplanes a lot, on the road pretty much every week.
And this is one of those I have to stop every now and then and say something, or they will probably strike me. So hopefully, we can just say a few words in between.
This year for News Nation, spent the last 2 weeks or so in Pennsylvania covering the attempted assassination of former President Trump. But a lot of the places I go, people want to talk about the true crime cases that I cover, especially the Brian Coburger case. So I wanted to answer the top 5 questions I get when it comes to the Coburger case. Question 1, when is the trial going to be? That one is easy. The answer is June 2nd, 2025.
As far as we know, as of yet, we don't know that 100%, if there's even going to be one.
For a long time, we didn't know the answer. There was no trial date. Now there is a trial date. It's about a year from now. We're told the trial is going to take 3 months, so it's going to be a long trial. The judge says 3 months. That will include jury selection, the trial itself, and then also the sentencing phase. Question 2, I get a lot. Could there be a plea deal? So that's an interesting question. Right now, there's no indication that there's a plea deal on the table, although I will say with other cases that I've covered, a plea deal. Discussions about a plea deal normally won't come till closer to the trial, which in this case is about a year out. But no indication of a plea deal right now. Normally, when there's discussions about a plea deal, victims' family members will be brought in to be a part of the discussions. And in this case, a plea deal would most likely or obviously involve death being taken off the table.
Okay. For anybody who knows, I think by now we've seen that they put that on the docket. There is going to be a plea deal, or they're going to bring up the discussion of the death penalty. And I think that's coming up in January or February of 2025, or even in November. I'm not sure about the dates, but I've seen it. So that's incorrect.
Victim Kaylee Gonzalez, I spoke to her family. They are against a plea deal. They want the death penalty. This is what they've told me in the past.
If he pled guilty and said, I'll plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I don't want that, because I do know, I studied the criminal system and the difference between life and prison. Even if it's 20, 30 years, he's 23 hours locked up. He doesn't get to do what is it, BTK?
BTK killer?
PTK.
Or whatever.
We've found out that he writes papers for other prisoners and gets treated really well because he's intelligent, and he's able to help other prisoners get preferential treatment through the legal system. We don't want that type of behavior.
Isn't it funny that they bring the BTK up, that everybody's been talking about, that Brian is like a BTK killer?
It's wild.
Isn't it? Like, who have they been talking to? I mean, everybody on YouTube apparently, except me. But yeah.
Behavior to happen in our case, where he has influence outside of this event. So
that's been a hard one, though. I mean,
he could write a book, he can do things. Idaho doesn't have a law particular that protects against that.
The hard thing with that question, honestly, is that's where you forget, and I don't know how it's possible, but you forget that there's 3 other families involved here. We're not the only ones. It's not just, I'm like, this is not a one
crime fits all.
This is
right.
This isn't just our daughter.
Right. Some might not want to go through the trial.
I know some of the other families definitely would be, yes, like, let's go. Where do I sign? And I understand that 100%. 100%. I understand that. But you know what? Ultimately, it's not our call. I mean, they might ask us our opinion like they did on the death penalty, and we'll give it. But just because, our opinion is yay or nay doesn't mean that, that's what we get.
Another interesting point to make.
And that's absolutely correct. Look at how they overlooked the families when it came to tearing down the crime scene, i.e. the house.
Personally, I don't think Brian's taking any kind of a plea deal at all.
No,
that's just my opinion.
No, but they're bringing it up as as I think it's on the docket just in case, right?
Yeah.
But it's there. But yeah, no, going back to the families, they might ask them, but they won't take that into consideration. They won't care, just like they didn't care, as I say, when they tore the house down.
Make when you talk about a possible plea deal is the fact that Brian Coburger's attorney, Ann Taylor, has been very, very passionate that Coburger is innocent. She's been more passionate, I would say, than lawyers in other murder trials that I've covered in terms of when she talks about her client's innocence. Especially, she said something especially interesting at a hearing that I was covering back in April. Take a listen.
For the court to allow the prosecutor to say, we need to keep this all private for a fair trial, really ignores the public nature of this case. It really ignores the fact that Brian has been essentially convicted in the media. You don't have to read but a few articles to see how negative they are about him. He has a right to have this information withheld, brought out in public, so that people can see it's not this neat little package. So people can start to wonder if Brian's innocent. Your Honor, Brian is innocent. And he has an absolute Sixth Amendment right to have his hearings in public.
Our defense team firmly, and I mean firmly, believes in Mr. Coburger's innocence. And right now he's being held to have a trial in a county that believes that he is guilty. In this country, we pride ourselves on a jury system that doesn't stand for that.
So the reason I think that's
And isn't it interesting that that News Nation, Law and Crime, bring that up? Don't you find that interesting?
Very. And I love Masseth. I just love her.
Yeah. No, but none of the media brings these points up. So I'm grateful for Brian Enton to actually do it. He might come across a little bit like later on differently, but I appreciate that that he even brings it in, and
I
they
do
should
too.
do.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that he
This is
even shows it.
important because this is factual, So I think these things need to be brought into the discussion on, on every show out there, like not just point out the guilt, but also point these things out. So I'm thankful for that.
it's important. Again, it just goes back to this plea deal question. There's no feeling right now like those negotiations are happening behind the scenes. I mean, the feeling is that Ann Taylor, the defense, wants to go to trial. They want to prove that Brian Coburger is innocent. And again, on the prosecution side, also haven't heard any rumblings about a plea deal at this point, but we'll see what happens as we get closer to the trial. Question 3 that I get a lot: do Brian Coburger's parents support him? I have sources who tell me that Brian Coburger's parents do support him. I can't speak for his extended family or siblings, but I am told that his parents do talk to him regularly on the phone in the jail in Latah County, that there was a plan to visit him, that they were going to visit him in person this summer, which they haven't visited as of yet that I know of, and I'm not sure if that plan is coming to fruition. But bottom line, I am told that his parents do still support him. Question.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I know a lot of people are like, why wouldn't the parents show up in court? They have. I think Andrea Burkhart is the one she live streamed after one of the court hearings, and I cannot remember which one it was, but she mentioned that the family was there, Brian's family, not the other side. Brian's family was there. They sat in a private room because of all the hate that they're getting, obviously. So, they came in and out sort of incognito because of what would happen if they didn't. So anybody questioning that, no, they were there. At least ones that I know of.
4, did Brian Coburger know or stalk any of the victims? This is something that has come up again and again. There's been some other people who have reported on it. There's been a lot of rumors. I personally, and I've been covering this since the beginning, have not come up with any evidence that shows that Brian Coburger knew any of the victims or stalked any of the victims. I did.
Did you hear that? What did he say?
Even Enton knows it.
Even Enton, yes. Listen to that again.
Shows that Brian Coburger knew any of the victims or stalked any of the victims. I did talk to Kaylee Gonzalez's parents several times about it, and they said that Kaylee was afraid of a stalker and that she talked about that, but nothing specifically tying Coburger to Kaylee or any of the other victims. And interestingly, also, about a month or so, I think, after the murders, I was in Moscow and I interviewed the manager of a vape store near where the victims lived who knew them, who did say that Kaylee was being stalked or followed. No connection to Brian Coburger that he knew of, but he did say that she talked about being stalked, which I thought was interesting. If you didn't see the interview initially, take a listen to this.
One of them more or less openly says, oh yeah, we've had a friend of ours be stalked before, so this is kind of why we all travel in a group like this. And just was it Kaylee who said that? Do you remember? No, it was Maddie who actually said that. So Maddie said it, and it was kind of like more mentioning, like motioning to Kaylee too, like who was right next to her. So you could tell that like they obviously all were trying to keep Kaylee safe, and to be there for her as good friends. And then to know that a few weeks later, now I won't see them, anymore, anything like that. So it's crazy.
How long before the murder about was that?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks beforehand, because I was telling them I hope they had a good Thanksgiving break and everything like that too, because I didn't know if I'd see them again. So, because with a lot of the times with the kids, with the way after the pandemic, some of the kids leave in waves. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to see you this weekend or not. Hey, hope you have a great, Thanksgiving with your family. And that was the last I saw them.
Did they elaborate any more on the stalker comment?
They more or less kept making the comment that it always seemed to happen either by the campus or down on Main Street. And the last time the Kaylee more or less made it sound like it seemed like it was down on Main Street, and that the person was coming from like around the Corner Club area, and then as far as I remember, it's the guy who ended up like trying to go and talk to her, and then he gave up on it and he ended up walking away. So she thought she was being stalked up to a certain point, and then looked behind her and he was no longer behind her. So
I just want to make sure that I get it right. So
yeah.
Tell me again exactly what you remember.
Just more or less, I made a joke about them being in a group, and they just said, yeah, one of our friends motioning to Kaylee that she'd been stalked recently. And so that had people constantly following her around. And it's not just a one-off thing, that this is apparently something that Kaylee had tons of issues with. Apparently she always had somebody who's constantly walking behind her like that.
So he said that, but I've never had any reporting or hard evidence that Brian Coburger was actually stalking Kaylee or any of the victims, or that he knew or followed them on social media. I know there's been other reporting out there. None of it has ever really come from me. I've never been able to nail that down. And it's interesting, at one of the recent court hearings, they were actually questioning one of the defense experts who was doing this jury survey, which I'll get to more in a minute. And it came up that the prosecution said that Brian Coburger did not know or stalk the victims. Listen to this little piece from court.
I'm going to play that too, but I just need to talk in between. But yes, again, point out that I like Brian Enton here. He's bringing it all up. He's bringing it all on the table. Good. This is what reporting should look like.
You acknowledge false that Mr. Coburger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false.
Which one?
That Mr. Coburger allegedly stalked one of the victims.
Yes, I was trying not to say that because.
But you knew that was false.
I did.
Yes. And so you have now, for anybody who had never heard that before, that question is now planted into them, unqualified representation that Mr. Coburger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false.
That's false. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so prosecution says that Brian Coburger wasn't stalking one of the victims. The probable cause affidavit in this case, which is pretty much all we know officially because of the gag order, is pretty basic in some ways. So I think that this is one of those questions where we may learn more at trial. I mean, this is the kind of thing maybe they'll elaborate on some of this at trial, but for now, again, no evidence. Question 5.
Yes. I'm sorry. I laugh every time I see Bill do that in court. When he's like, but it's not true.
Isn't it hysterical? He sounds like he's Brian's attorney at that moment in time.
Oh, it's so funny. It's really like, and he's so flustered, and he's like, oh, I got him. And then, he didn't realize that he got himself, really. But yeah, I felt bad for him in that moment. Yeah.
5 I get a lot is, where is the trial going to be? You'd think that would be an easy answer, that it would be where the murders happened, in Moscow, Idaho, in Latah County. But Brian Coburger's defense team is asking for a change of venue. They want the trial moved. They do not feel that Brian Coburger can get a fair trial in Moscow, Idaho. They think it's too small of an area, and that the jury pool has been tainted because they think that everybody knows about the case and that they've already formed opinions. This is a big topic right now because there's going to be a hearing at the end of August that I'm going to go to, where they're going to talk about this change of venue and the defense's request for a change of venue. And they've already filed a motion about it. And I want to read you part of what the defense said. They said, Mr. Coburger is protected under the Constitution of the United States and the state of Idaho. His protection to a fair and impartial jury is infringed without a change of venue. A fair and impartial jury cannot be found in Latah County because of the extensive publicity that is ongoing and inflammatory. The inflammatory nature of the publicity has included inaccurate information and inadmissible information. The publicity has been extremely pervasive in the small community of Latah County. Remediation, such as enlarging the jury pool, will not cure the problem. And
what do you think that he meant there by, or what Anne meant there by inadmissible?
I think she meant a lot of the claims that the media makes about Brian are not even admissible for court. Claims of cannibalism, claims of putting video cameras in another female's apartment, Those are just some of the examples I could think of that, would be not admissible in court, but the media still continues to spread it.
Okay. I sort of took it that there are things in the PCA that's in a, like, I probably took it wrong.
I think he's at this point, like, they're talking about because of such negative reporting by the media that even enlarging the jury pool isn't going to help, because the media has just been they've made so many inaccurate statements. And furthermore, some of the things they've said aren't even admissible in court.
Well, I wouldn't say inaccurate. They're using a lot of what's in the PCA. So that's
but
why
nowhere in the PCA does it say Brian's a cannibal.
No, not that part. But a lot of what is in the media is what's actually in the PCA. And that's why I was like, I wonder if she does mean any of the things that is in the PCA, because some of it is going to be inadmissible.
Right.
For sure. So you're probably right, but I'm wondering if it's more than that.
Yeah, it could be both.
Yeah.
All right. And they actually did this survey, the defense, where they hired an expert to call people in Latah County to find out what they knew about the case. And in their filing, they said the community attitude survey, that's what they called it, shows case recognition is 98%. 70% of those recognizing the case have already formed an opinion regarding Mr. Coburger. Their opinion is that he is guilty. The survey shows that of those that have the opinion Mr. Coburger is guilty, 51% state they have a fixed opinion. That means there is nothing that will change their opinion. And they go on to say, it is noteworthy that outside of Latah County, the incidence of fear associated with the case is significantly reduced. So they are pushing for the trial to be moved. I spoke to one of our News Nation senior producers, Allison Weiner.
Did you catch that?
Also an attorney. She's been covering the Coburger case with me.
Go on.
Did you catch that last part?
For the change of venue.
Talking about fear in the community would be lessened with the change of venue. Fear of the community in this case, right? Regarding this case. Here's the thing I can't figure out. They continue over and over to claim fear in the community. Even in some of these court documents, right? It's some of their reasoning for keeping things sealed, because it would endanger lives if this information got out. And then they have this fear in the community. Why would an entire community be living in fear if the killer is in jail? Doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not. And obviously this has been spoken of before, and I mentioned that too, because is it like the fact that they are afraid that he's not the one, or are they afraid that he'll be let out and then he'll come and murder them? I don't think so. I honestly don't think people are that stupid, right? That a man who killed would be let out to let. So I really don't think that's the case. I think it's the case where they're just thinking the fear comes from what if they don't have the right guy? But
I'm wondering if the fear has to do with, because if I remember correctly, in some of these questions with Edelman, the survey questions, some of the answers had to do with being like ostracized by their community if they were to find him not guilty.
Yes.
Yeah,
correct. You're absolutely right. That's another side. You cannot go against the grain in that community, or you will be ostracized. So whatever. That you are absolutely correct. Good catch.
Me, really since the beginning. I wanted to kind of go deeper on this issue because it's so current right now with the hearing coming up at the end of the month. Take a listen. So, Allison, what do you think about this this argument that the trial should be moved? I mean, do you
Well,
think it's a good one?
I think it's a pro forma argument. Of course, we were expecting that there was going to be an argument for a change of venue. And that's no surprise there, no surprise in the cases that they cited. The difference here is that in their argument, in the defense argument, besides the statistics, which are coming from people that are hired by the defense, we should keep that in mind. But besides the statistics, they're saying that the publicity has been inaccurate, that there are facts that are getting out there that are not accurate, and also the notion that it is so pervasive. It is a very small place. And I thought that was somewhat persuasive. But we've got to keep in mind that even though they cite that that the media is getting so many things, so these inaccuracies, there's not a single example cited in this motion that speaks to something that was inaccurately reported. So
yes, and I have to cut her off and say there's a reason for that. Why would you want to repeat, the cannibalism? Why would you want to repeat that? I'm sure she can point out 100 examples right off, the tip of her little finger with.
If I remember correctly, didn't this last filing from the defense, or not the one that was dropped today, but I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something, didn't she cite something like 200 plus news articles of negative reporting of Brian on this case?
Yes, probably. But it's not just news articles. I mean, look at what they're doing. So they can tiptoe around this, but unfortunately, they're the ones that go out there, and they did the whole Brian was thrown the whole problem with the university. Remember that? Where did that's not that's inadmissible, because when did that happen? How did that happen? I can tell you, I tell everybody where that comes from. We know that came from Gigi on Twitter, and we know how she went about getting it. And so obviously, why would they put something like that out there? And that's just one. And they spun that to high heavens by now. Like, oh, and the one person who would know this would be the girl that went to school with Brian, or was a student. And they had that interview. I can't remember her name now. And of course, now the lady who interviewed her never brought this point up, but I would have brought it up. Like, was he fired? Did anything bad happen? Because, word get around. She would know, but she never said one word about it. So there you go. Don't believe that shit.
So I'm waiting to see what that's going to be. And then maybe that comes up in argument when we go to court and they argue this motion. And we haven't seen the response from the state yet either.
Yeah, it's interesting. They talk a lot about the media coverage in their argument to have the case moved, saying that basically Latah County has just been inundated with stories about the Coburger case. But when I've interviewed Kaylee Gonzalez's family, her dad actually said to me, I think it would be good in Latah because if you go outside the city of Moscow, there's farmers, it's a rural area, people who don't really watch the news.
I don't know. In the defense's motion here, we have statistics that are a little troubling. A population of 41,000, eligible population of jurors is 38%, which means a total of 25,000 people. That's not very many people. And the saturation of who knows about the case. But the other statistic, if these statistics are correct, and I'm sure that the state will have their own experts that say exactly the opposite, but if these statistics are correct, or the judge believes they're correct, then we're going to see, a group of people that are biased, that already have made up their minds, not only that he's guilty, this is what the defense argued, but that he should get capital punishment. And that's a little disturbing. If that's true, that so many people in this county have already decided that he's guilty, including people in positions of authority, which that was also very troubling.
Hey, Golf.
The prosecution has...
Yeah.
Sorry, darling. I have to hop down.
Yes.
So sorry, but I'm going to keep listening, but I got to hop down.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll be here. I'll just play this. And if you want to pop up again, I'm here.
Yeah, I love talking to you. I'll be listening, and maybe I will come back up.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, I was going to bring up not only that, what she just said, but on top of that, people who not only made up their minds already, but people that you cannot change their mind, even if evidence is shown. So just as a cherry on top.
Isn't officially filed yet, or said what they feel about this. But I've been at other hearings where they've essentially said they don't want to move the trial. The filing hasn't been made yet.
And the judge doesn't really want to move
it
the
doesn't
trial.
seem
He
like
said
the
that
judge
too.
does either.
Yeah.
Why do you think? I mean, is it better for the prosecution if it stays? Does it matter? Do you think?
I think it matters if these statistics are correct. It matters that they'll be getting a bunch of people saying, basically, I can keep an open mind when they can't. The other thing that we didn't touch on, I just said people in authority. The mayor of this town was involved in the fear following the murders, talking about everybody being safe. There was a pervasive fear. You were there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of lingering feelings about what happened. People didn't forget in that town what it was like to be there before he was caught. And when he was caught, there was this immense relief. So there is a pervasive feeling that he's guilty when you talk to people.
But even if people had a fear, and even if they've heard about the case, and even if they've read articles, but then they come in and they're selected as a potential juror and they say, okay, but I can start fresh now and I can look at this with a fresh set of eyes and be non-biased and just listen to what is told to me in court. Isn't that good? I mean, can't you go into it knowing about it, but still be a good juror?
You certainly can go into it knowing about it. The fact that if you're going to be unbiased, it's going to require what they call kind of intensive voir dire. And that's when you ask questions of the jury. The judge lets you go beyond sort of the minimal jury questionnaire. And they've done that in other high profile cases. I'd be skeptical because this is such a small population and a lot of people are associated with the University of Idaho, which is where, the students went who were sadly murdered. And they're associated, the police chief was the one giving the information out and claiming that they had arrested the suspect and giving people a sense of, Chief Fry,
right,
giving people a sense that everybody's safe now. And he's supposed to be a witness at the trial. So that already presents a constitutional problem. So there's other issues involved with having things right in that town. While the police chief is dealing and taking care of the jurors, he's getting ready to be a witness. That doesn't work.
Correct. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So even if he deputizes or gives that tasks to someone else, he's still a witness and he's still over whoever he gives that job out to. So that wouldn't work. But in all of this, I find it so interesting that News Nation and Law and Crime are bringing up these points. Again, I'm appreciative of that.
If he becomes sheriff, because he's running for sheriff.
If he becomes sheriff. Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, technically what you said is totally true. If they come in and say that they have not formed an opinion, that they can be unbiased, that they will hear the evidence and they will rule based on the evidence. Yes. I'm just curious to see what the state's experts are going to say about statistics in the town, because if it becomes a statistical thing, then it probably stays in Latah.
I also wonder it's already a small town and you've got this telephone survey that the defense hired someone to do. Like, aren't they just tainting the jury pool even more themselves now by making these calls and saying, hey, what do you know about the case? Did you hear this? Did you hear that?
Probably, but that's a good strategy. I mean, then they can move it to.
That's some bull. That's some bull. I don't agree with that at all, because this was already public knowledge. It was out in the media. So now they're claiming that comes from the defense. That is some straight up bull. And I do not agree to that. But hey ho.
Ada County, and they said all these people, even when we were surveying them, some people called the police to say, why are these people calling?
We'll talk about that, right? They call, so that when they were doing this telephone survey, the defense, people were even so sketched out by getting the call that they were calling the police. So it is an on-edge.
It's an on-edge community. Yeah. Let's be fair. I mean, they've been through a lot. And when we come there, I mean, they know you. And when you're there and they're comfortable with you and you've been straight up and you've been honest in your reporting, but a lot of people followed people home, harassed people. I mean, their feelings about having to relive this, and remembering that this was a community on edge. Yeah. I mean, with a horrible murder of 4 kids. It's very.
And I think Annie is 100% correct in that. What she said is that people are afraid of not following suit. And that is what's happening here in this little town and the town next to it and the town over, unfortunately, as well. So it's not just like Latah County. I think it's Washington close in close proximity because everybody's going to know who was on that jury. Eventually that will leak out. People will talk. You know how these things go. And so that is scary to people. So I'm afraid that knowing all that I don't know if he would even get a fair trial anywhere else. He would get a much fairer trial though, I'm sure, than there, but I'm hoping that that's no, I'm wrong on that one.
Disturbing. So yeah, I think it touched everybody in that community, and there were vigils where everybody came together, and the pervasive opinion was, we've got the killer.
Yeah.
He's in jail.
I know that the way the law is set up, that Brian Coburger has to get a fair case, and that's
Sixth Amendment.
Yeah, that's the way it works. And he's given a lot of rights because of that. But I just think about the victims' families, again, because I've interviewed them and I know what they've been through, and they have jobs and they're hardworking people, and they already have to think about taking a lot of time off work when this happened. Even for the hearings now, they have to figure out their vacation days, and they're going to have to take 3 months off work if they want to attend the entire trial, plus like having to go. The defense is suggesting Boise, Idaho, which is like the biggest city in the state. But that's not anywhere near Moscow, Idaho, and they have to rent a house probably. I saw this happen with Lori Vallow's trial too. The victim's family's grandparents had to do that. Does that come into play, or is it just all about the legal side?
I think it should be all about the legal side. I mean, I feel for the families. I think it's horrible to have to go through all of this again, to hear the evidence. They're going to hear things that are very disturbing. They're going to see physical evidence that's awful. I mean, so this is going to be really hard on the families, and it makes it that much harder to have to travel and have to stay somewhere else.
How
and you're
is that
right.
fair to them?
The right to a fair trial, it trumps that, because this man is going to be put to death if he is found.
Yep, I agree with that. Thank you, News Nation.
Guilty.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with a capital case like this, you have to make sure that all of his constitutional rights, all his civil rights were protected, so that if he is found guilty and if he gets, and if the jury decides on the capital punishment, that everything was done, he was given a fair trial.
Isn't there something also to be said, though, if you commit a brutal crime in a town or in a city, like, shouldn't you face the consequences and face a jury and the community in that place? When they move it away, like, aren't you, do you know what I mean? Like, isn't that the way our system's supposed to work?
No, our system's supposed to be fair. And it's supposed to be fair that if one, like, innocent person is convicted, then our system has failed. So it is calculated to protect everyone who is accused. And sometimes that includes guilty people. I'm not saying in this case, I don't know, we're waiting for the trial like everybody else.
Yeah.
That doesn't preclude us, having met families and talked to families and seen the wreckage of these murders, from understanding that this is something we can never even imagine living through. Thank goodness. I mean, God forbid. So I just think that we have to, but you have to understand a legal system. It is to protect the rights of the individual who's charged with a capital crime. And while that may be horrific for families, and think about the O.J. Simpson families, 2 trials. And celebrations, if you recall. I mean, I don't know if you do, but it's like, yeah.
I get the law, and you're a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but I've covered the trials, and I know that you have to protect people's rights, and you're innocent until proven guilty. It just does seem like during the process, the defendant's rights seem more important than the victim's sometimes.
Okay, here's where he lost me. This is what I was talking about. But up until this point, I think they make she does, at least the producer, because of course she's a legal expert. She's probably a lawyer. And so she's bringing up all the points that we're talking about. The law, that's the main thing here, is you follow it. It's not about your feelings, unfortunately. It's about the law, right? However it turns out to be. But you can't have mob mentality, because Brian is like, mob mentality it a little bit. And that's not right. That's not law. That's different. That's like staying outside of it.
Do you ever think that?
Well, I think ultimately the victim's rights, if he murdered them, will prevail.
Yeah.
If he did it. I believe in the system.
All right, so that's what Allison had to say about it. Again, the hearing is at the end of August, so
yeah. So that's about it for this one. Let me stop sharing that. He will be out there and he will be covering it, so we know he's going to be out here or out there in Idaho. I pinned a link in the chat if anybody wants to come up and join me to discuss this further. If not, I think I'm going to close this down. So I will wait a minute here before closing it down and see if anybody wants to, brave souls, come up, talk to me. You know how much I hate talking to myself. So hopefully somebody will grab the bull by the horn and jump up here and start this discussion, because we can talk about this or we can talk about something else. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes, but it's linked to the top. I want to hear what you guys say. I have a hard time doing both this and watching the chat. So I would like to learn that a little bit better to be able to take questions and stuff. Maybe we can do that. If anybody has any suggestions or any points you want to make to what we've been talking about. OCD Shaggy, come on up here. I don't think I ever talked to you before. Thomas, if you want to jump up, anybody, you're all welcome. No takers. Okay. Well, then I guess I'll shut this down. And until next time, we'll hopefully next week, we haven't set it in stone yet. Mr. Schultz there, the defense attorney, criminal attorney, he will be with me here on the stream. And we'll be talking about the Idaho 4. I know he's busy. There's a couple of trials that he's followed this week, and he's a lot on, I think, Atlanta News, some kind of network up there that he's been covering the trial for. So he's busy, and he's on all these big channels and stuff like that. So I'm very grateful that he even is coming on here with me. But that's going to be a very good discussion. Of course, as soon as I know a definite date, I'll post it. It was supposed to be today, but it got postponed due to his trials that is ongoing. So I will probably see you then, if not before, if I can get my hands on those documents, the PCAs in different formats. I'll try to go over them as much as I can. And maybe over the weekend or something, I'll throw in a live, but we'll see about that, okay? I would like to thank everybody who was here, everybody who's listening, everybody who's in chat, all my wonderful moderators, all you wonderful people in here. I do appreciate every one of you. All right. Thank you so much. And you all have a lovely, lovely, lovely evening. And I'll see you later. Bye.